Hi, Wildling. Hey, I'm still looking for some more interesting guests on European herbalism and foraging. So, if you know anybody that would want to be a guest in my podcast series, please feel free to reach out and contact me through social media, Wild Plant Forager, or through my website, wildplantforager.com. Thank you so much. Welcome to Wild, the podcast for wildlings just like you. Wildlings who want to transform the prevalent plant blindness to collective plant wisdom. My name is Lieve Galle. I've been working as a herbalist and wild plant forager in Belgium since 2002. In those years, I've seen a lot of changes. Working with plants has become more popular, but I've also seen time is running out for our planet. As foragers and herbalists in Europe, sometimes we're dealing with different plant species and different cultural approaches towards plants. In some countries, working with plants is licensed, and in others, it's almost illegal. I believe that together we can learn from one another and be stronger. There is nothing more empowering than connecting wild souls. Together, we can have a greater impact on restoring the ancient link between people and plants. And that's why, for this podcast series, I'm talking to fellow herbalists and foragers in Europe. So if you're ready to find out what you've never been told, but what your soul already knows, welcome to Wild. Welcome, Wildy, to this new episode of the Wild Podcast. And today I'm sitting here with sweaty hands because here is a very big forager, ethnobotanist, author of 50 books on wild edible plants, herbal medicine, culinary botany. I've only read a few of those books, and his tiny book on l'ortie, the stinging nettle, is one of my favorites. Here is François Couplan. Welcome.
Hi. glad to be with you tonight.
It's so nice to have you here. So, let's start with the beginning. How did your love for plants get started? Because you have more than 50 years of experience. How did it all get
Uh
started?
50 years of experience teaching, but I'm 74, and I got started right from the start. So I think I've got over 70 years of experience for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's no big deal anyway. I mean, it was just a natural thing for me. My mother was an alpinist. We were living in Paris. We are living in Paris, in the big city. But even in the big city, there are plants. There are still our plants. And anytime I would see anything green or a flower or whatever, I was just turned on. We had like a country house just outside of Paris. And I don't know, it was my life, it was my environment, it was my relationship with plants, my relationship with the world anyway, was not, I mean, did definitely include a relationship with plants, animals as well. People, I had a much easier time relating to plants than relating to people, actually. And I believe it's right. I mean, people are a lot more difficult to deal with than plants, I believe. Um, so, and also, as I said, my mother was an alpinist and she was in love with the mountains, especially the high mountains, the Alps, the Mont Blanc, and all that area. But when she had kids, she couldn't climb up to the summits. So we would go on vacation for a month, sometimes over a month, 2 months, that was in Savoie, and we would just be there, run around, go around, walk around. And my mother would would show me plants, and would gather raspberries and strawberries and blueberries and mushrooms too. It was just a very natural way of life for me. That's only when I grew up in Paris. That I realized that people see the world differently. My classmates, they were not that interested in plants. And then when I grew up, um, I got turned on to rock and roll. I got turned on to plants, but smokable plants and that kind of stuff. And all types of different way of changing my mind. And that was a that was a very very intense, very very intense part of my life. But I still kept the connection with plants, with nature anyway. And at one point, I had a breakdown, because I
Mhm.
was doing too much stuff, drugs and whatever, and playing rock and roll in a band, and that was heavy. That was tough, in a big city. I would spend all my time in London, sleeping out in the parks and dropping acid and whatever not. Um, and listening and playing to music. So that was too intense, and I broke down. And I had the chance that the physician who dealt with me didn't give me pills and whatever, but suggested that I go out to the country, and I did. And there I met. That was in the east of France. I met an older man. I mean, I was 16 at the time. He was over 80. um, he was a school teacher. He had been wounded in World War One, and he was a poet, and he was a botanist and poet. So he taught me botany with uh, from the poetry he was writing. You know,
Ah.
uh, that was just amazing. Again, it was natural for me. I mean, I didn't learn from textbooks. I learned from poems. And from hands-on experimenting, being out there. As he couldn't walk very, very, very well because he had been wounded. He would give me direction, tell me, you go to this place and you'll find this plant, like woodruff or morning, what is it? Rosalie, Drosera,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
carnivorous plant.
Yes, yes, I know.
So anyway, then um, I decided to run around France to make, well, Western Europe actually, but say a tour de France of hallucinogenic plants, psychedelic plants. Yeah, because I was very much into it at the time.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And it definitely was a failure. I didn't find really anything interesting. I had some weird and not so pleasant experiences. So I
Mhm.
just dropped it.
Mhm.
And I decided, okay, something important that happened in my life was when I was 18. I was born in 1950, so when I was 18 was 68. And May 68 in Paris. I was in Paris because it would be a long story, but anyway, I come from a family of uh, peasants in Brittany, poor people, very poor people, and my grandfather and then my father got out of their background, rural background. My father um, joined the army,
Mhm.
and he graduated. I don't know what's the word. I mean, he became an officer anyway. You know, so as he had climbed up the social ladder, it was my turn to go from there and move up and be a part of the French social elite.
Mhm.
You know, so that the studies I was doing. Polytechnique, that kind of stuff. But then in May '68, I just dropped out because I wasn't interested at all. I wasn't. I was interested in plants. I was interested in music. I wasn't interested in learning math and becoming an engineer or
Mhm.
businessman or whatever. Not at all. So anyway, after that and a few other things, I decided since the society I'm living in is not bringing me what I'm looking for. I didn't know what I was looking for actually, but I
Mhm.
knew what I was not looking for. I
Mhm.
knew very definitely what I didn't want, and that was something very basic, very strong. So I thought about it and came to the conclusion that if I don't like the society that I'm living in, I just have to split. And if I want to split, what do I need? So I really got into my basic needs, into evaluating my basic needs. And my basic needs are very simple, actually, air to breathe. I can't go more than a few minutes without air. Water to drink. I can go more than a few days without water. And then food.
Mhm.
I can't go for more than a month without food. So as I had already practical knowledge of wild edible plants, I turned towards them and sort of gave me a crash course myself, because there wasn't anybody to teach me
Mhm.
anything. There wasn't any book around. Actually, the one book first book I got that came up later, that was later. Anyway, it was Food for Free by Richard Mabey. Yeah.
Yes, I have that book too. Yeah.
Excellent book. But it came out later. So I didn't have anything to rely on except that I met an uncle of mine who
Mhm.
was sort of cast away from the family because he was a vegetarian. He had been a vegetarian for 40 years. And we were very big meat eaters because as we came from a poor background, eating meat was a way to show off our social status.
Mhm.
Great. And I loved meat. I enjoyed it. But when I was 20, I got sick. I really got sick, and medicine didn't understand anything about it. But when I talked with my uncle, who was a vegetarian, he told me, "Hey, come on, I was eating meat 3 times a day, 3 times a day, every day. That was definitely too much." So, and he told me, I mean, we talked a lot, and he had developed his own philosophy for some good reasons. And so he showed me another side of life that I didn't know from my French, Parisian, petit bourgeois background. So I started to see life differently and honed up my skills, and, I was ready to go. And then I moved on. I spent a year in Corsica doing my military service, and there I discovered ethnobotany because there
Mhm.
was an older woman there who had developed ethnobotany in Corsica, Marcel Conrad, and that's the first time I heard of the word, and I started trying to grasp the concept of ethnobotany. The study of the relationship between people and plants.
Mhm.
Mm. So as I had a lot of time during my military service, I wasn't doing much. I started taking notes. I started writing my first book, as a matter of fact, and learning from this woman and from people I met, gathering information from people who knew the local traditions about local
Mhm.
plants. And then I moved to the US. Actually, I was going to India, but as quite a few of my friends, well, it was, the road to Kathmandu, the thing. And quite a few of my friends had been there, but some of them didn't come back for some very bad reasons, linked to drugs and things. And I decided, but I was very, very turned on by all these spiritual trips and things like that. But I decided to go to America first because rock and roll was still one of my big things, and the West Coast rock and roll, with Grateful Dead and Frank Zappa and especially Jefferson Airplane. Yeah, that really turned me on. But anyway, I sort of got lost in the way, you know. I eventually made it to the West Coast, but then I ran into healing festivals. There was the post hippie period on the West Coast, in 1970s, I got there in 1974. And but the first thing I did was to split off. Um, I was staying in Santa Barbara with friends, and I decided to just go, and I just went, and I just went and lived in the woods for months at a time, and but I knew things about plants, and I was still doing research in the libraries, and then I would experiment with what I had learned and then learn some new things, experiment, write down what I had learned, take notes and everything. So I was building up a knowledge from my own experiences, from what I learned, especially about the traditions of Indians in North America, putting it together, living it. And then I ran into these healing festivals, as I said, and I spent my next 10 years on the West Coast. At first, learning from people, and then quickly, this festival, that kind of thing where people come and with no definite purpose besides just being together and sharing, you
Mhm.
know. And sharing, what did I have to share? I didn't know. I had not a clue about that. So at first, I joined an herb walk. Somebody was giving an herb walk, and I said, "Oh, well, great! I'm going to learn something. I'm going to learn something new." And it happened that actually it was I who was answering people's questions and showing people things. I mean, plants and everything, and telling them about them. So I realized I had some knowledge, and other people realized I had this knowledge. And so at the end of the herb walk, they told me, "Well, I mean, obviously you know more than we do. So next time, it's up to you." I didn't expect that, but it was great. It was a great boost to, for my ego anyway. It's great when people tell you that. I mean, you know something, you're good. So okay,
Yes,
so
isn't that strange how our own knowledge is very often like a blind spot to ourselves, right?
I see it with a lot of my students. Now I have students who have been working for quite a while, and they definitely know something, but very often they're just blocked up because they don't have confidence in themselves.
Yes, yes, I see the same with my students, yeah.
Eh,
Yeah.
so sometimes we have to push people. So I got a big push there, but it was very nice. And then at one point, some of these business-minded American people, told me, "Hey, come on, man! I mean, with the knowledge you have, you could make your own business. Start teaching." And it was 1975, and I started doing it. I think doing, I started giving plant walks, herb walks, plant courses on the East Coast, and developed my own thing. Well, actually, something else I had been doing, because I was just meeting just a bunch of people, just hundreds of people on the West Coast then, and one big thing that made me very popular, that when people heard about my knowledge of plants and edible plants, and as I was French, French people win on two levels. One is food, the other one is love. Uh, Yeah, oh, it was post hippie time, it was peace and love, and food. So I became the wild chef. It was excellent because people will tell me, you come to our place, you stay as long as you want, and all we ask you is to cook us some wild dinners. We invite friends over, and it's up to you.
All
So I
right.
would run around and gather plants and look around in the cupboard and ask them to run some errands, get some food, and
Uh-huh.
well, I would cook them some wild feast. Yes, really, really. And it was an excellent school because it forced me to be creative.
Yes.
I didn't know what they would have in the fridge. I didn't know what I would find as far as plants go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, after a while, I knew my way around, so it worked. It worked fine. So anyway, that was just I wouldn't say bliss, but a lot of it was bliss, but not only, it was yeah.
Yes, and I'm curious to know if so you've traveled places. Did you see like a difference in basic botanical knowledge in different countries or regions?
At the time I was staying. I did a few travel here and there, but I was staying mostly for 10 years, really, in the U.S., in Mexico, Guatemala, Central
Mhm.
America, and things like that. And I did explore pretty much all of the 48 states. I mean, plus Hawaii. Didn't
Okay.
go to Alaska, but really, I was just running around. I was just running around all the time. When I got up in the morning, I didn't know where I would be sleeping that
Mhm.
night.
Mhm.
Somebody might just drop by and say, "Oh, there's something happening out there in Montana. Who wants to join?"
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
and I would go, and of course, I mean, I had my books. you know, had my California flora, my Arizona flora. After a while, as a matter of fact, I mean, I bought a bus, I bought a VW van, you know, to to host my library because I was accumulating quite a few plant
Wow.
books
That's a
uh,
great idea.
over the
Yeah.
time. I mean, yeah, I wish I could find them back because uh, I would have a lot of rarities there.
Yes,
In there.
treasures.
Really, yeah,
Yes.
really. Well, I have a library right behind me. You see a bit of it with 3,000 books. So
Wow.
I got quite
Wow.
a
That's
few.
impressive.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. Whenever you want to come, you're welcome. If you want to browse,
Wow.
in all languages, even in Dutch.
Wow, great.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I was at the same time, running around like that was very difficult because I was feeling the need for some reason, for some maybe stupid reason, but to put down the roots somewhere, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for some reason, I just couldn't. I was just traveling around with friends and all across the US and here and there. And at one point, um, as yeah, well, I had a lot of friends of all types and quite a few girlfriends, and one decided wanted to move to Europe. She wanted to know what Europe was like. You
Mhm.
know, We were at the time living on the Cherokee Reservation. We'd spent 3 months there with the Cherokee Indians. Had learned a lot of things, which was great. But at the end of the summer, she wanted to fly over to Europe, France. And when we got there, she felt really good there. She
Whoa.
learned French in 3 months for an American. I mean, that's a feat. That's a feat. I never met anybody else like that who could learn the language so fast. So anyway, and when we got there, well, I put the word around that I was giving workshop. I wanted to give workshops, seminars, weekends, week long things, and I just got so many offers, really right from the start. People were interested, people were turned on. And I'll also put out the word that I had a book to publish, because on my notes I had um, put my notes all together, and I'd come up with a book that I wanted to publish in English, but my publisher in Santa Barbara, California, died, unfortunately. So I dropped the idea, but I had something to publish, either in English or in French. And actually, a publisher came up and told me, "Oh yes, I'd be interested to publish your book." So when I saw that, I said to myself, "Well, maybe I'll go around and find a better deal or something else." So I ran around and I ended up with 10 contracts for
Whoa.
10 books. Yeah.
And
So
that was the start of all your books.
yeah, yeah. By the way, I've written and published 123 now.
Whoa,
Yeah, you said 50, but it's grown.
real? Oh,
It's grown from there.
that's whoa, that's overwhelmingly much. I mean, yes, I've published
Well,
a few books and it's a lot of work, right?
yeah, but I mean, I don't do much besides working. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I spent
Yeah,
all
I'm
my
very
days
happy
and
that you
nights
wrote
doing it.
you wrote your books, of course. Yeah, totally. There was one book that was really fascinating me. The title was really fascinating me. I haven't read it yet, but the title is La nature nous sauvera, réponse préhistorique aux problèmes d'aujourd'hui, which translates as Nature will save us, prehistoric answers to modern problems. Can you tell us something more about that?
Yes, well, see, the thing is, my quest for plants was also a quest for understanding who I am and what
Mhm,
world I'm living in.
mhm,
It was there right from the start. Even when I was a teenager, when I was 12 years old, um, I realized that I'm I'm living, I think we're living in a very hypercritical society, where people say things and don't do them.
mhm,
There's a bug. When I was 12 years old, I definitely realized there is a big flaw in us, in our society, something that's wrong,
mhm,
you know. And I tried to find out what it was. And it took me years. Now I believe I've understood the thing pretty well, and I'm living it very differently myself.
mhm,
I'll tell you about it if you want. But so studying, uh, I found out that in order to understand myself, I have to understand where I'm coming from as a human being. And
mhm,
as a human being, I have two parts. I have, if I want to put it very simply like that, we can get into deeper into it if you want, because we have to in order to understand, because I'm sort of splitting things.
mhm,
But anyway, I'm part natural, I'm part cultural. Actually, I'm both. I'm both at the same time, and it's something that's very important to understand. But I have to understand the natural part of myself, which I did by living out alone in the wood. I
mhm,
definitely got in touch with that.
mhm,
You know, I had to sort of put myself away from society in order to find own being, my own being in relationship with what surrounded me, plants, animals, weather, rocks, you know, in a more natural setting um, than society, which is the other part of me. I mean, I'm part of society as well, and
mhm,
it's taken me a long time uh, being able to accept it. But I realize at one point that there's no way I can live by myself in the wood all the time. I mean, I just don't want it, you know.
Mhm.
That's what teaching is great, because I can take people with me, you know. I've been teaching two different types of subjects, I would say. One is
Mhm.
wild edible plants. I called it wild cooking, you know, or wild gastronomy, gastronomie sauvage. And the other one is soft survival, you know, survie douce. In the wild gastronomy, you know, um, we go out, we meet plants, because plants are beings which we
Mhm.
can meet very easily. We'll talk about it again if you want. But and then we gather plants and we cook together. You know, it's festive, it's kind of convivial. It's and we are learning. We are definitely learning from the plants and learning about the plants. Okay, and the other one, soft survival, is, you know, we take off for a week, bringing the strict minimal
Mhm.
with us, and we just spend a week um, meeting not only plants but landscape, different landscape. You know, I am getting in touch with the weather. You know, which can be very intense sometimes. You know, and just what I want doing that, what I want to share is that it's possible to feel good living in and with nature if you understand
Mhm.
her.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you know a little bit of techniques and things like that, and if you can um, let yourself be, basically, rather than trying to do all the time,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
Although we do have to do as well, you know. When it
Mhm.
starts raining, you'd better build up a shelter quick and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, you know.
Mhm.
So but anyway, it's more in-depth experience. So um and with years I started um learning about our history, about ethnology, anthropology, you know.
Mhm.
I started running around, flying around, you know, whatever, around the world. You know, I've been many countries and met people who have different cultures, you know, different ways of relating to the world around them. I found out that they're different, but they're just the same. So
Mhm.
there's definitely something um, global
Mhm.
about humanity, but there are differences. Um, and this has brought me to understand better our Western culture.
Mhm. Okay.
And our Western culture is definitely like most other cultures in the world, but it's definitely based on agriculture.
Yes. Yes.
And the big change, the very big change, has been agriculture, the beginning of
Mhm.
agriculture,
Mhm.
you know, 12,000 years ago. But from there, uh, different things have happened differently in different cultures. And in our culture, we have developed a technology which is extremely powerful. We have developed a way of relating to the world, science, which gives us a lot of power, which gives us a lot of opening as well, an openness that you don't find in other cultures as well. So we have power, we have possibilities, and we have to be very careful about what we do, you know. And a lot of people, I mean, global warming, you know, destruction of the environment, all these kind of things. Even though we weren't talking about global warming at the time, but I mean, you know, the destruction that the technology, the power of man is. uh, how can I say it? Is I don't find a word, but anyway, is putting on nature. Well, it's something that I feel, something that I've been feeling since I was a kid.
Mhm,
Really.
mhm,
When I was in living in the woods in America, I was feeling good, really good. But whenever I would get out of the wood and find myself in an environment that had been um, modified, I would say, by Western civilization,
mhm.
you know,
I think this sounds really familiar for a lot of
it's
people. Yes.
it was painful,
Mhm, mhm,
actually painful. Something that I
mhm,
felt in my body, really,
mhm,
not only in my mind but in my body as well. So, um, what what a lot of people have sort of expressing now, like sort of distress relative to the destruction of the environment, is something that I've been living for 60 years, maybe something like
yes.
that, ever since I started actually feeling it.
It's like some kind of grief for the world, really. Yes.
No,
No?
no, I
For
don't.
me, it is grief for the world.
Okay, not
Yes.
for me. I don't care about the
Okay.
world. I mean, I'm part of the world. It's grief for me. It's grief for me because it makes me unhappy. It makes me.
Yes, it makes me feel unhappy for.
I don't feel different from the world myself.
No, no, no. That's not what I mean. What I
All
mean
right.
is, because I feel that I'm part of the world,
Hmm.
um, it's like you say, you can physically feel the pain of what is happening to the world. So this is some kind of grieving process, I
All
think.
right. Yeah. If you want to put it this way, if you
Yeah.
want to put it this way, all right. But I personally don't feel the difference anyway. I've
Okay.
always taken it very personally. Whenever, okay, here I live in Switzerland.
Mhm.
Switzerland is a cute country. Switzerland is definitely not a natural country. France is more
Oh,
natural because
okay.
there are places in France where um, people don't have a little less money, you know, and agriculture puts a little less pressure in
Mhm.
places. You know, in Switzerland, you have to look really hard to find a spot which is not cultivated because peasants they get money, they get money
Ah.
for cultivating, and the big problem in our world is again agriculture cultivation.
Yes. So you
It's
have more
it's
wild
much too
spaces in
simple.
France than in Switzerland?
Pardon me.
So you have more, spaces, really wild spaces in France than in Switzerland?
There are very very few wild spaces in all of Europe.
Yes, that's true.
All of Europe has been at one point um, used,
Mhm.
modified by man.
Mhm.
There's hardly any spot in Europe where I feel really wilderness.
Mhm.
You know, in
Mhm.
America, there are a few more
Mhm.
places, because eh, it's only 500 years that Western people, white people, however you want to call it, have started overwhelming things, changing things around.
Yes.
Here in Europe, it's already 6,000, 8,000 in places years old.
Yes.
But I'll go back to this later because um, what I want to say is that no, or I'll say right now actually,
Okay.
um, the thing is I can feel nature everywhere, even in cities,
Mhm.
you know. So there's actually no difference. Even when I go to different places in the world, I've had the same feeling. This feeling of stress and pain. I seeing the destruction of the natural environments. And
Mhm.
I've seen it all over the world. But at the same time, when I'm in a city and I see one plant which is growing between two cobblestones,
Mhm.
it's nature.
Yes,
So
totally.
something that I've learned basically is that, okay, we're destroying nature for sure, but nature is there anyway. When I'm in Paris, I can see, I can feel that I'm just there in a short um, moment between two forests. There was
Mhm.
a forest before, there will be a forest after, you
Yeah,
know. Okay,
yeah.
I'm just right now in this moment, and probably I wish it's not probably. I wish there would be more. I think it would be a lot nicer to let nature express itself. I would be very happy about it. But that's my job.
Yes.
That's my job. That's what I'm doing now, and I'm doing it more and more strongly. I believe, and I hope more and more efficiently, because I believe mm, we need to be fairly fast, probably, or I need to be fast anyway, because I'm not going to live. I mean, in 26 years, I'll be 100 years old. So I have to do my thing. That's why I like writing books and teaching and reaching out, um, trying to make people realize that um, it's very simple, actually. And at the same time, it's very tricky, because I see a lot of people who have very good ideas, but basically, all these ideas are always revolve around gardening, you know,
Aha.
about cultivating,
Yes.
you know. And this is where it starts being tricky, because the only way we can, I believe, understand the world is with paradoxical thought. I don't know
Mhm.
if you know what I mean, but paradoxical thought is when two things are true at the same time, you know.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'm part of nature, but I'm different from nature at the same time.
Mhm.
It eases things a lot, because you don't have to dissert about whether man belongs to nature. So Anthropocene is okay, we can do anything because it's part of nature anyway. Or we don't belong to the world. So in this case, we have, no, it's no problem if we kill people, because, they're not
Mhm.
part of nature, and we have to make way for nature. Something like that. And you hear both of these currents of thoughts, and I believe both of them are wrong. Like, I've had myself, I have a lot more, or I've had a lot more pleasure being in very natural environments. But I realize that I'm part of a culture. I
Yes.
appreciate my culture. I've grown to appreciate more
Yeah.
and be happy with it. And at the same time, um, I don't know, share with people what makes me happy and what makes me feel good in life,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
makes me uh, feel like I understand myself better, and like I understand the world I'm living in better. Accept it because it has good sides.
Mhm.
I'm very happy to be talking with you through the internet right now.
Yes.
Um, I'm happy to be fairly warm while it's actually snowing outside, or it's between rain and snow. So I'm grateful. One
Mhm.
thing that I've learned definitely is to be grateful. Is to
Yes. Uh-huh.
accept what is, because it is a reality that man, for some good and bad reasons, because there is no good or bad. When you think with paradoxical thought, you know that there is no good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that at the same time that you have to do what you decide is good, and
Yes.
avoid as much as possible what you decide is bad. you know
Yes.
and you know that sometimes you'll feel bad and sometimes you'll feel good, but it's just part of being.
Yes. I actually I think I can see that philosophy in one of your books that I have. It's the one, the nutritional guide on cultivated and wild plants. And what I really like about that book, what it does is, um, and this is something I really, really love. What it does is it just makes wild plants and cultivated plants. They don't have different chapters. They are like
Mm.
equals. They are equals. So you have like an evening primrose, or you have a stinging nettle, and then you have an avocado or a carrot in there, and it's just another ingredient. And this is, I really like that it's not like, oh, this is the cultivated. Sometimes I get this response from people or from students. They say, oh, and these cultivated vegetables, I'm sure you don't eat these. And then I think, I really love pumpkins, and I love a cauliflower, and I love, it's not as if they are
Yeah.
evil or
uh,
um yeah.
I hear you. I hear you very well. It's nice. I hadn't thought of it this way, but I definitely see your point. But I'll jump right into it with my paradoxical way of
Mhm.
thinking. And yes, you're right. But no, no. Wild plants are different from cultivated plants, and cultivated plants are different from wild plants. You
Of
know,
course,
and
yes.
our big problem. So it's important, I believe, to see both at the same time.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Because something which is very important for me is to um, uh, I don't know, um, have people realize that most of them, especially those who are not turned on to wild plants, most of them live in a world which is just humanized, which is just
Mhm,
controlled by human. Everything is human. Uh, People come to my workshops or my seminars and say, "Oh, I love nature. I have a big garden." I said, "But garden, cultivated plants are not natural. They have been
mhm,
transformed by man, and you decided to put one here and sow it and water it and pull out the weeds and everything. You're controlling it. So it's not at all the same thing. Nature is your garden. Yes, there is nature in your garden, of course. It's the weeds.
mhm,
It's the weeds.
mhm,
And if you look at weeds as being nature developing itself towards a forest,
mhm.
basically. If you don't do anything in your garden, just wait for 50 years and you'll be
Yeah,
in the
it
middle
will
of the
become a
forest,
forest, yes.
you know? And it's great. I mean, I love to think this way. It's helped me a lot accept. This is what I was trying to say earlier. It has helped me a lot accept this dismemberment of nature. This dislocation, this destruction. This chopping out of primeval forest. To
Mhm,
put to plow the earth and plant things, which is exactly what's been happening for several millennia now,
mhm,
and
mhm.
most people don't realize it anymore because it's just old. It's ingrained in their in anything they do or think, you know
Yes.
but when I tell them, "Oh, you love nature. All right, great, great. I have a good trick for you there. You know, look at your weeds. No, weeds are nature. Ah, interesting, interesting. Ah, so tell me, what can I eat? You know, which weeds can I eat? Ah, okay, chickweed, and dandelion and nettle and plantain and sow thistle and wow, great, great. Ah, and are there plants which I can use for this healing or whatever? Yeah, 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 sure. Okay, good. Okay, but then but this plant here, Jimson weed, well, that's a toxic plant. I'm not going to leave it in my garden. And then I tell them, well, when you get to the point where you can leave in your own garden a plant, no matter what it is, even if it's toxic plant, but just because it's there, just because you allow it the right to live, then you're into this relationship with the living, that many
Mhm.
people write and philosophize about. It's a big thing nowadays, lots of books about it. It is very simple. It's very simple. It's just to be able to get to the point where the weeds of your garden are not, they start to be usable plants. You're
Yeah.
going to use them, but you're
Yes.
still into dominating. It's still into uh, anthropocentrization. I don't know how you say it in
Yes.
English,
Yes, it's
but
true. Yes.
anthropocentrism.
Yes,
You
because I
know,
was wondering also, I thought it was very interesting that you had the nutrition charts in that book about the cultivated plants as well as the wild plants, and I was it really got me thinking, like, if you use the framework of the book, which is that it's just another vegetable or just another fruit. I was wondering if we need to get like nutritionists more involved into foraging, because it really baffles me how few things they know about the potentials of like the wild greens that are very nutritional. Um, yes, I was
that
just wondering if I don't know why it is that nutritionists in general really know nothing about wild plants. To me, it's like
well,
a missing link.
I can explain it to you, like I did in the book you mentioned or other books. Um, it's basically because our society is a hierarchical society, with strata, and at one point, well, for one thing, um, when you start cultivating, you have to fight against nature
Mhm,
because nature is always stronger than you, unless you just spend a lot of time working, inventing new technology, or conquering new places, new territories, where you will impose your law again in your
it's about
production.
control, yes.
Yeah, yeah, because if you don't do that, then you die. Because the problem with agriculture is that you can feed more people
Mhm,
than you would with just gathering
mhm,
on a definite spot.
mhm,
So your population will grow faster than the production. That's Malthusianism. Malthus
mhm,
had seen that and said it, and it's the truth. And the way we're able to make it work for us, um, not to avoid starving, is by having conquered pretty much all the land there is to conquer on the earth, although we could go a little farther, and having developed a technology which is extremely efficient due to the use of fossil fuels.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, one person who cultivates can has I mean can develop as much energy as 500 or 1,000 people, you know, working with a whole, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So I sure we can feed a lot of people, but we have to produce. We have to mass produce. Even organic agriculture would probably not be able to feed 8 billion people right away like that, unless people change their way of relating to the world. But the thing is that we have to understand ourselves as human beings. And one thing which is very important for us is social status. We have part of the brain which is called the striatus,
Mhm.
which is the how do you say, le circuit de récompense. How do you say that in English? You understand? Récompense. How do you say? Um,
Compensates?
it
No.
makes you, it gives you pleasure. It
Ah,
releases dopamine and things like that.
okay.
When you eat a lot, when you make love, when you dominate people, when you different very basic feelings, it's part of
Mhm.
our primary brain. And one thing is dominate. We love to dominate. We love to dominate and be admired. And inventing agriculture was a great way to uh, create surpluses, create richness, and to create different social strata. The one
Mm,
who owns, the ones who
yes.
work for the owner, and slaves. You know, and I make it short. Of course. It's in my book. One book that I don't know if you read it, but Ce que les plantes ont à nous dire. I don't know if you read this one.
No, I haven't.
Do it, do it, do it,
Okay.
do it. I think you will enjoy it. I think you will enjoy it. And we'll talk. We'll talk again afterward.
Okay, that's
Uh,
good.
uh, eh,
That's good.
but anyway, just to make a very long. I mean, it's not that long. It's 12,000 years. As opposed to all the time we have spent on Earth. But anyway, even more closely, that was in the Middle Ages. That the dominant class, nobles
Mhm, mhm,
and clergy, they decided to separate themselves by uh, o- in an obvious fashion. That means living in different type of houses, wearing different types of clothes, showing that it didn't work.
mhm,
Um, speaking a different language, the language of the court, as opposed to the patois, the dialects of the peasants.
mhm,
And also, as far as food goes, eating more meat products, you know. And as far as vegetable products go, uh, only cultivated plants, and
mhm,
leaving everything that was wild to the peasant. In other words, like in the 16th century, eating beans, green beans brought from America, was a symbol of status, showing
mhm.
that you were a good person because
Yeah.
you had the means to have a gardener who would grow this for you, because there's no way you could get it otherwise,
Yes, it
as
was also the
opposed to.
time of exotic trees in gardens, like in the gardens of castles, you see them a lot, these exotic trees, and it was just like a status symbol because, uh
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
everything was a status symbol,
Mhm.
But if you had nettle soup, it just showed to everybody's eyes that you were just a poor peasant,
Yeah.
not able to do anything in that except nature's gifts,
Yes,
not
and
to be
I
able.
think I think that is exactly why it could be interesting for a nutritionist to know more about wild plants because they work a lot with people who have to work with a low budget
It
and
doesn't work. I'll tell you, I've done it. We've done it. It doesn't
okay.
work. It doesn't work. I have one of my students who's worked in Paris with migrants,
Uh-huh.
who were, as you say, on a low budget, showing them, and especially, I mean, they could have known about gathering plants, because it was probably a tradition in their countries.
Hmm.
But they just didn't want to do it because they came to France and
Ah,
they came to the West, and what they wanted was to have money to fill up their caddies in the supermarket.
all right. That's
Eat as
interesting.
much,
Well,
eat
I know
as
one of my
much
students.
processed food as they could.
Yeah, well, one of my students actually works with refugees as a doctor, and she encourages the people to, she says, I just show them like the most common plants like stinging nettle, dandelion, plantain, and she says actually they do it because they come back to me afterwards saying, hey, I found a field with lots of stinging nettle. And
Yep,
so I think some people may be more open to this than other people, but and it's interesting
definitely.
because I realize in Belgium a lot of people stopped foraging after the Second World War because it was kind
For
of
that reason,
the hunger food that they had to eat during the war, and they wanted to leave it behind, and which is totally understandable. Yes.
that's the same story. You know,
Yeah.
status symbol,
Yeah, exactly.
status
Yeah.
symbol.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I mean I've been talking with nutritionists. And, in my upcoming book in April will be about this. Very
Okay.
scientifically discussed,
Oh,
and
I'm really
we'll
looking
see. We'll
forward
see.
to that.
Oh yeah, I think you'll enjoy it too. I'm sure you
Yeah.
will. There's a lot of information in it. A lot of information, and but still it's difficult. It's difficult to turn on nutritionists, for instance,
Yes.
you know because they have very good reasons which are very bad reasons. In other words, their good reasons, what they think are good reasons, are actually not rational reasons. They're actually emotional reasons. They're cultural reasons. They're cultural blockages. And well, that's what we're working on. That's our job.
Yes,
It's
yes,
far
it's true.
from we are far from being there, huh?
Yeah, yeah, we have a lot of work to do, it's true. Yes.
But we're doing it. I'm sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
But
I but
th-
what I can see also in Belgium is like we have these. Well, it's sometimes they even call themselves eco refugees, and these are people, well, especially from the north of Belgium, from Flanders, where people are so fed up with the fact that there are hardly any forests here or any open natural spaces that they just move abroad, and very often it's to France.
I
This
can
is
relate
really.
to that. I can relate to that. In 2 days, I'll be going up to my place in southern France.
Mhm.
It's I've got 60 hectares there, 5 houses, in the middle of 400 square kilometers of. It's not wilderness. It's not wilderness because people have been living there for 3,000 years. And in summertime, they have sheep grazing here and there. So it's not
Mhm.
wilderness. You can feel the imprint of man all over the place, definitely. But it's a lot more subdued, you know. So I'll be walking around, meeting nobody for days.
Mhm.
It's luxury.
Yes, and I can imagine that it also makes like the foraging a lot easier because
Ah,
what we see now in the cities, at least in Belgium, it's still a very niche thing, but it's starting that some cities are really investing in like public spaces where people can go foraging. Do you have that in France?
what do you mean?
Like in Paris, would there be options to go foraging?
Oh, of course
Um,
I do it. Yeah.
okay,
I do it in the Bois de
because in
Vincennes,
Belgium
in
this
the
is
Bois de
kind of.
Boulogne. I do it in the Forêt de Saint-Germain. I do it all
Well,
around Paris.
this is a thing in Flanders, in the northern part of Belgium. You cannot forage anything in forests, even if you take a leaf that has fallen on the forest soil. If you take it home, you are breaking the law.
What's that? Why?
Yes. Because, well, actually, the reason is that we have the lowest forest density of the whole of Europe. There are just so few forests that it's they want to protect them, which I totally understand. But it's a total different situation, I think, than the situation in France, where you can go to forests and forage.
Well, it's tolerated.
Mhm.
France is a country of tolerance. It's forbidden. I
Oh,
mean,
it is forbidden.
oh, you can't do anything in France without having the authorization of whoever, the state or the owner of the land or whatever. You're not. It's not like in Norway or Sweden or Finland. You can go anywhere and you can forage. You can plant your tent or sleep
Mhm.
anywhere.
Mhm.
Even on private land. You know.
Yes, I know, yeah.
You know. Allemansrecht, it's called. You
Yes.
know Um, and in France, it's the opposite. You're not allowed to do anything because every piece of land belongs to somebody.
Uh-huh.
But in fact, you can do anything you want, pretty much. Unless somebody comes and uh, gives you a fine because they find you there and they want to be a pain in the ass.
Well, this actually brings me to another question of mine because I read a very interesting article about how pharmacists in France continue to block the legal recognition of herbalists. And it's a ban that has been going on for more than 80 years, apparently.
Yeah,
What I thought was really interesting about this is that I know that before that, French pharmacists were actually hiring herbalists to work in the pharmacy, because I know this for sure because they were, even in the north of France, they were recruiting herbalists from Belgium. And the article says, I will quote now: state recognized herbalist diplomas were ended by the government in 1941 and not restored after the war.
yeah,
It's not clear why the ban was imposed. Most people suspect that pharmacists, struggling to get medical supplies because of wartime
yes,
restrictions,
yeah. It's very.
wanted to eliminate competition from herbalists.
It's not
However, the
actually.
ban has
Actually,
never been lifted.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, yeah, it's true, it's true. But it's not herbalist, that's a different word. It's herborist.
Yes.
Herbalist
Yes.
is different, but it's different. Herborist was a legal status. It was a job. There was a
Mhm.
diploma. But
Mhm.
yes, to say the pharmacist made it ban in 1941, and they maintain it banned, and that's it.
Yes, it's
That's it.
actually very similar to the situation in Belgium, I think, for the
Probably.
herbalist. Yes, because I have been teaching for 15 years on the main herbalist school, well, one of the main herbalist school in Belgium, and it really pains me to see a lot of talent and a lot of skills just going to waste. Well, not all going to waste. Some people are very creative, working around the law, but, and I say this with a lot of respect for soap makers, but herbalists are not just soap makers, there
I
is a lot
understand.
of knowledge and skills when it comes to medicinal plants, and it's just such a pity that it got banned at one point in history and it never got reclaimed anymore.
Yeah, well, what can I say about it? It's that's the way it
Yeah.
is. I mean,
What is
I
your opinion on that? Should we be more reclaiming about that, or just
well,
accept the
I'm not.
situation as it is, or
I'm personally okay. Personally, um, I don't feel the need for it personally because what I really want to teach people is go out and pick plants themselves.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, going to an herborist, a plant seller, somebody who sells specifically plants, or go to a pharmacist where you can find plants also. Um, I mean, sometimes I use plants, for healing.
Mhm.
But um, if I need them, I just go and get them myself and make my own pharmacy, and because I believe, I believe in two things. One is prevention. Okay,
Mhm. Yes,
prevention.
absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I want to stress. And prevention has a lot to do with uh, alimentation.
Mhm.
What you eat.
Mhm.
You know. So I believe wild plants should, if I can use the word should, be part of anybody's diet, anybody who wants to be healthy's diet. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's part of it. I mean, I think you can't really avoid it, and it's healing in itself just because you're relating to plants, you're relating to nature, you're going you're going out, you're exercising yourself, you have a different way of living than just consuming, you know.
Yes. I totally
And
agree with
and
that. Yes.
selling and buying plants in a pharmacy or in a herboristerie
Mhm.
is consuming.
Mhm.
It's an interesting type of consuming, more so than probably than I don't know, buying whatever. I mean, anything can be useful and everything can be dreadful, really. You know, um, mm, sometimes, I mean, plant medicine has its useful sides for sure,
Mhm.
but it has its limits as well.
Yes, of course.
You know, my wife got cancer, and she's been doing chemotherapy. It worked. It almost destroyed her, but it destroyed the tumoral cells more than it destroyed her
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
far. But plants have a role to play along with that. But
Yes,
if she
absolutely.
hadn't had these molecules, she probably would be dead now.
Mhm.
So, so I'm not going to fight myself to bring back this diploma of herboristery in France, because what will happen is that in France there are 148 plants which are free for sale, you know. And if they bring back this herborist diploma, what they will do is take these 148 plants from the public and give them to the herborist, because the
Mhm.
pharmacist, the lobby is much too strong to allow anything else.
And wait, what exactly do you mean by free plants? How
148 plants which can be commercialized freely.
Ah, okay.
You can
So
buy
they're
them
not
outside of pharmacy,
okay. Yes. All right. Okay.
like mint
Yeah.
and linden, teal,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
whatever, few things like this.
Okay.
140, 48. It's not much. In Italy, they have 300, for instance. But we used to have 36, I believe, or was it 26 until 2008? And in 2008, they've brought up the number of free plants. They freed 148 plants. But what they would do if they bring back this diplôme d'herboriste, would be to take these 148 plants from the free status and give them to the herbalist, because
It's a crazy
everybody
concept to
would be
have
happy.
like a free plant and a non-free plant, you
Pardon
know?
me?
It's a crazy concept to have like free plants. I mean, all plants are free, right? I
No,
mean,
no, you
yeah.
cannot. No, I mean, Belgium is the same,
Yeah, yeah, of course, I know. And we have one of the strictest legal
because
frames when it comes
some
to
of these
plants.
plants actually are dangerous. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yes, of course, of course.
regulations are a good a good thing.
Yes,
Except
yes.
except that, of course, you know how it
Yes,
works.
the thing in Belgium that is a little bit crazy is that we have, things like, how do you call it? Like, ground ivy, the Lierre terrestre
Ouais,
in
je connais.
French. Um, yeah, it's forbidden in Belgium, and I know that in the neighboring countries it's not. So,
No, it's not. Why is it forbidden, you know?
yes, it's a substance called pulegon that
Yeah,
is
okay,
actually
Polygon.
liver toxic, but you need a huge amount of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, okay, like in Montpullier.
yes, yes, exactly. But the plant is so aromatic and so bitter. You will not
Oh,
eat a
no,
whole
it's not
bowl
bitter.
of it. You eat it as a herb, not as a vegetable.
Oh,
It's
I use it. I use it a lot, and
and you're still
I can use
alive.
a lot of it.
Yes, and you're still alive. And I think it's so
Of
crazy
course,
because
of course, of
this
course.
one plant, I mean, Belgium is so small. It's ridiculously small. And all the neighboring countries, as far as I know, allow this plant. So it's just a crazy concept
Yeah,
of yes.
I agree. I agree. Yes. I think I'm gonna have to go.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Thank you so much for your time, Francois. I really
It's a
appreciate
pleasure. It's a pleasure. But
our talk.
let's do it again whenever you want.
Yes,
I mean, I'm
absolutely.
free. I can do whatever I want. So it'll be a
Nice.
pleasure again.
And I'm looking forward to your next book. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be in touch.
Okay, then I will just say enjoy your meal and we'll talk later. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks again for getting in touch, and we'll talk again.
Okay. That's good. Bye.
Bye bye. Hey, how do you say your name?
Lieve.
Lever. Okay,
Yes.
Lever. All right. Great.
Okay.
So bye, Lever, and
Bye
until
bye.
soon.
Nice talking to you. Thank
Definitely.
you.
Definitely.
So, Wildy, that was it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Some new episodes are coming up, so I hope you'll be listening. And in the meantime, stay wild and keep powdering your nose with dandelion pollen. Bye. A warm thank you for listening, Wildy. Are you feeling a wild itch after this episode? Well, just head over to wildplantforager.com and feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I hope you'll be there. But for now, just go outside and follow your wild heart.